Okay, another video, this time analysing Belfast Confetti by Ciaran Carson for the AQA GCSE Literature exam. Belfast Confetti. Suddenly, as the riot squad moved in, it was raining exclamation marks. Nuts, bolts, nails, car keys, a fount of broken type, and the explosion itself, an asterisk on the map. This hyphenated line, a burst of rapid fire. I was trying to complete a sentence in my head, but it kept stuttering, all the alleyways and side streets blocked with stops and colons. I know this labyrinth so well. Balaclava, Raglan, Inkerman, Odessa Street. Why can't I escape? Every move is punctuated. Crimea Street. Dead end again. A Saracen, Kremlin 2 mesh. Macron face shields, walkie-talkies. What is my name? Where am I coming from? Where am I going? A fusillade of question marks. Right, analysing this with FLIRTS, form, language, imagery, rhythm, rhyme, tone, subject, and starting with subject. The poem is describing the violent conflict between protesters and security forces in Northern Ireland. Northern Ireland was an area that is historically steeped in conflict because of the clashes between the Protestant Unionists and the Catholic Nationalists. And this poem reflects how this was a part of everyday life in Northern Ireland, and this describes the one particular conflict, but it could be any conflict between a set of protesters and the security forces. Now, in terms of form, if you look at the poem, it is quite a striking poem to look at. It begins at the beginning, obviously, but it starts the first word, suddenly. Suddenly. And this is the poet beginning in medias res. In medias res. I'll explain that in a moment. The stanzas, as you can see, are structured in quite a confusing way. There's a long line followed by a short line. Sometimes that short line is one single word, and the or sometimes a bit more, and the shorter lines will be indented in a way. Now, by beginning the poem in medias res, and as I said, I would explain this, medias res is a Latin term for meaning in the middle of something. Okay, so essentially we start in the middle of an action. The word suddenly kind of suggests that something else has happened, and then suddenly, as the riot squad moves in, so we start with an immediate action, and it kind of adds to, we get a sense as a reader of confusion, the confusion of what it would be like to be there ourselves. The line lengths and the varying line lengths add to this confusion. We have to, as readers, travel across quite a wide plane, so from left to right, quite a long line, and then back to a shorter line. And the indentations, as you can see in the and the explosion itself, means we have to kind of read backwards almost, which again is confusing. The language, we have 3 quotes there. Now, again, as I've said in previous videos, I am only able to hint at the poem as a whole and just point out key things. There are more. There's more imagery in this, and there's more language that you could discuss. But I'm just focusing you on kind of key parts to get you started. So it's blunt, direct, harsh. The place names, the street names, Balaclava, Raglan and Inkerman, they are reminders of conflict. I'll explain those in a moment. And also that we have the military language and military kind of images as well of the Saracens and the Kremlin 2 mesh and the face shields. This blunt language reflects the blunt action. It's as simple as that. The action being described is a protest, it's harsh, it's violent, and the language is reflecting that. The structure of the lines as lists, so nuts, bolts, nails, car keys, Raglan, Inkerman, Odessa Street, Saracen, Kremlin 2, it kind of removes an emotional context from the language. It is just brutally depicting, if you will, this protest. The street names, well, Balaclava was a battle in the Crimean War. Raglan was General Raglan, who was part of that. And Inkerman, Odessa Street, Raglan was part of the Crimean War and the Battle of Balaclava. Inkerman, Odessa Street and Crimea Street, these are all names of British conflicts. And it's quite significant that it's British conflict as well, because from a nationalist perspective, they're not British, yet their street names are named after British places and British victories and so forth. So there is this constant reminder of conflict. The description of the Kremlin 2 mesh, Macron face shields, walkie-talkies. Again, these have become everyday items, everyday objects. You know, these are seen on the streets of Belfast at the time regularly. The imagery, we have the quotes there, and the title, I think, is gives a striking image. It's a euphemism, and I'll explain that in a moment. There is punctuation clearly through the poem, not as in the punctuation marks of the poem itself, but it describes raining exclamation marks, found to broken type, hyphenated line. And this is indicative of how the speaker is unable really to think of words. He's unable to communicate, but only the punctuation marks. So the euphemism. Euphemism is a phrase that we might use to describe something. Essentially, it's a nicer way of saying something. So it's when we, for example, say that someone who has died has passed away. It's a nicer way of actually just saying it dead. It's a softer way, as it were, when we refer, as we will do in later poems, of the fallen. These are soldiers that have died in war, but by describing them as being fallen, it's a softer image. Belfast Confetti is one of those, a bit like the Glasgow kiss, as it were. The Glasgow kiss, which is a headbutt, but here we have Belfast Confetti, and it's used to describe confetti as something that we use at a wedding, paper that we throw up, and it goes all over the place and lands at the ground. But here the confetti is not paper, nuts, bolts, nails, car keys, as we see, and they are being thrown, not because of a happy occasion, but they are being thrown as a violent protest. A confetti, in a way, also if you think about it, you throw confetti up, it goes up and then out and falls out, much in the same way as an explosion. Of course, explosions and bombs were very much a part of the Northern Irish culture for much of the latter half of the 20th century. Now, the image of punctuation marks, as I've said, shows this breakdown in communication. The speaker is unable to communicate effectively, unable to find the right words, and instead speaks through punctuation marks. Not only that, but if you look at the punctuation marks that are being chosen, they create visual images of what is being described. So the asterisk on the map is an explosion. The hyphenated line is gunfire. And again, these are, if you will, euphemisms. These punctuation marks are euphemisms. An asterisk on the map seems quite insignificant, unimportant, but being there, it's very significant. A hyphenated line to describe gunfire seems pretty innocuous, but to listen to gunfire, to be facing gunfire, is extremely frightening and exhilarating and dangerous. And so these kind of euphemistic ways of describing things is kind of stepping back and looking at things in a different way. Okay, the rhythm and rhyme scheme for this poem. There is no regular meter. Now, meter is a way that it's something that we use to describe a rhythm. I haven't really talked about meter too much in my previous videos, but I'm pretty sure most of you will be aware of iambic pentameter, which describes a lot of the plays, the rhythmic structure of Shakespeare's plays, and of course sonnets. So there's no regular meter. So in other words, the line lengths, although there is a pattern long, short, they're not the same length. The long lines aren't all the same length in terms of the syllables, for example. The shorter lines, so for example, marks, line 2, marks, and line 4, the explosion, they don't have the same rhythm. And there is no rhyme scheme. There are uses of end stops and punctuation at the end of lines and enjambment. So the lack of this regular meter and the lack of a formal pattern, formal rhyme scheme, again shows no order, and it shows confusion on the streets of Belfast because of this conflict. There is confusion, there is a disorder and disruption, and the rhythm and rhyme scheme reflects this. Now the end stops and the enjambment also reinforce this lack of order. You know, some lines have a stop, an end to them, and others don't, and it's kind of the stop start as it will, showing the confusion and the panic perhaps of the people on the streets. Now I've chosen these two quotations for the tone. I think they sum it up quite well. There's lots of doubt and uncertainty, and for much of the latter half of the 20th century there was a lot of doubt and uncertainty about the Northern Ireland troubles. There is also a sense of frustration. I do get a sense that the tone of this poem is one of frustration. The breakdown in communication is is part of this frustration, and is a symptom of the frustration as well. The repetition of questions reflecting doubt and uncertainty in the troubles in Northern Ireland at the time. The frustration in the speaker. There is no answers to the questions. Why can't I escape? What is my name? Where am I coming from? Where am I going? There's no answers provided for these. The final line just gives more questions, a fusillade of question marks, again using that language of conflict and war. And the prominence of questions and the fact that there are more to come and that there are no answers just adds to the sense of frustration in the tone of the poem.